Welcome to another episode of the No Ego Podcast, Season 3. That means we are taking the season to answer your questions. Actually, bigger than a question. We're responding to emails you're sending us, letters you're sending us, because a question just gives kind of the same 2 to 3 minute answer or leads us into training. And we really wanted to get more off the cuff. And when companies have us come in and they give me time to just go off the cuff and answer questions from their leaders, their employees, we get rave reviews because people get the philosophy, but where they struggle is in applying the philosophy, and your ego is so good at saying, yeah, but this is super different. My ego gets involved here, but not here. This is a real situation that I need an answer to. So we're having a lot of fun unpacking these. And so far, I just keep asking Alex Dorr, our VP of People Evolution, back. How you doing, Al?
I'm good. And I feel honored to be the one to help us figure these out, the first 5 or so. And then I know you've been looking forward to starting to bring on some other people in your life or thought leaders to do the same experience and bring in, 2 philosophies, yours and maybe theirs, to see if you can help from different angles. So it's been great to start it, but I can't wait to see who else you're going to
you'll be in there. You'll be in there.
I'll keep sprinkling in.
You'll
when
be
you need
sprinkling
me.
in. No, I think it's a cool concept because there's some that were more legalistic. And I've got an incredible colleague who is an employee, an employment lawyer. And so many people tell me, well, we can't do this because of the law. And so that's going to be great. I'm going to bring my own coach to the table, the one I personally use. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be a cool concept. And we can get different views, different takes on the same challenges. But maybe in that we can start to develop an even third, fourth, and some responses we think of right as we're responding.
It would be interesting. Cool. I just thought this on the fly, bringing back some of your past guests that have been popular. Now that if they listen to that, you don't have to do all of the introduction and what their philosophy is because you've done that. Could be cool to bring them back, and now you work through our dear size.
That is
together.
A cool idea.
I don't know.
I think that's a cool idea because some of my favorite guests I've had on, it would, like Safi Bakal talked about loon shots, and we could give him real change scenarios and see how he would apply some of his concepts that are more about physics. But he's so great at translating physics into the workplace.
And I'm thinking Fred Luskin was the happiness guy. Bring him back.
I got to
get
back in touch
situation.
with Fred.
That was
He's amazing. I adore that guy. That guy is a genius. The first time I saw him talk, and then I went down the rabbit hole. I started reading his articles, and I was especially his work. I love his work on forgiveness and, Dr. Doty on compassion.
Oh my gosh.
And so we won't reminisce all of our podcasts, but good idea. That's how things happen here at Reality Based Leadership as we sit around and have crazy talks like this. So I think we should jump into another email. I call them letters, but people when's the last time you actually got a letter, right?
Which would be, those are available.
Yeah, you can mail it, right? But these are emails. They're basically dear size. And today we're going to take one about handling drama, and especially if conflict isn't your favorite. I give you a lot of ideas on what you can do, and a lot of people know it, but find it hard executing on it in the moment. And this is from one of our fans out of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And it's a little bit lengthy, so I'm going to, again, highlight it, but I want to bring in her wording for some of the details instead of generalizing it, because I think that's super important that we hear from direct the wording. People, language is important.
It is.
Language
crucial.
is really important. Hello, Sai. I had a multi-disciplinary team that takes care of patients with chronic diseases, and we're in the midst of a big expansion. We're trying to take our services to a broader range of providers and clinics in our system. I'm not a direct supervisor for anyone on the team, but my job is to lead them in the context of the program that I was hired to run. This is my first official position as a manager, and although I lead nurses, I am not a nurse myself. I feel as though they think that I don't understand their roles or have the knowledge or expertise necessarily to take care of patients. The team generally gets along well, but there seems to be an underlying lack of trust and some ineffective communication. For example, one nurse will come to me to complain about something one of the other nurses did and will say that she wants me to say something to the other nurse to resolve the issue. Then I go to their supervisor, who I see as a mentor, to ask how to handle the situation. Meanwhile, I'm thinking that they should be adults and work the issue out together. Another time, a nurse has a problem with something a receptionist failed to do. Around that same time, I invited the practice admin to one of our meetings so that she could get to know the team and the program that takes care of some of the patients in her clinic. For at least half the meeting, the nurse complained about the receptionist. I let her say her piece, hoping that we would get it to blow over more quickly. Thankfully, the practice admin turned out to be a good leader for the receptionist, and things have gotten better. However, I think the situation could have been solved in a better way, and I anticipate similar situations coming up as we start to work with more clinics. I admit I am conflict adverse and should have taken a more proactive approach to this. We could stop right there, but we'll come back to that. Yeah. Remember that sentence. When you do writing like this, when you are just writing your heart out, there'll usually be like one sentence where I'm just like, drop everything else and just go work on that.
Yes.
So I don't want to be a plot ruiner, but when I got to that sentence, I'm just reading it and I'm like, yes, you are conflict adverse. And yes, you should have taken a more proactive approach. And that will be enough for you to work on your first couple of years of leadership and management. I want to develop my skills as a leader so I can positively impact the program and move forward in my career. She goes on to say that she's preparing to collaborate with many more staff members, and she's working on refining her team's relationship building skills. She's tried to bring people together. Other things take course. Yeah, she's trying to professionally develop people. So she's gotten some sessions together. People move quickly into talking about patient status reports. So she's tried to schedule kind of offsites or things when they don't have other work to do. She finds that people... some people take days off during that time. And then she ends it with, I'm not sure about my power or authority in this situation, and I get frustrated and put my team building ideas on hold again. I know this is coming from an egocentric place, and I want to turn this around so I can be a more effective leader for my program and team. Help, please. Now, when we just get these right before we come on the podcast, so we don't sit around and think about, like, we try and make this as organic and live as possible.
We do one read through, take a couple notes,
and then we jump on. Yeah. And we do that on purpose.
And the first
separate.
time I read through Another thing I wanted to add is separate.
Yeah, we don't ever talk about this.
I had conflict-averse circled, so that was interesting.
Which is fine. We should both show our, we both had conflict-adverse,
down here.
boxed out.
For the viewers.
Yeah, so maybe that's where we start. If you are stuck, type out, but it's even better to write out, but type out, print out, read to yourself with a highlighter, because often I find when I do that, my subconscious is screaming the answer to me in the midst of all the story. And the answer that's screaming is, I admit that I'm conflict adverse and should have taken a more proactive approach. Well, you didn't. Regret is just giving too much attention to decisions we made while learning. So don't even go into the shoulds.
Well, repeat that again.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I can't remember where I heard this too. I told people I'll start to note my sources. It's probably an Instagram meme, but somebody was being interviewed on Instagram. I can visualize it now. And I talked about, do you have any regrets? And she said that she used to, but then a teacher told her that regrets are really just paying too much attention or giving too much attention to decisions we made while still learning. And so it's really a way of your ego turning inwards. Instead of judging externally, you're judging yourself harshly. You're judging someone who's just learning multiplication for getting a flashcard wrong.
Yeah,
that's
so
just
true.
And by the way, our whole lives we're learning multiplication. We'll get flashcards wrong. I don't think you ever
get out of
there.
that.
So you shouldn't have any regrets. But what really stuck out to me in all of these situations, there's a common theme. So I had nurses who I made up the story. They think I don't know how to do my job. I had a meeting where somebody tattled on somebody. I tried to bring it up gently. I've tried to kind of arrange things for development. All through here is conflict aversion. And if you're ever passive, you will get aggressive. And if you don't get aggressive in your behavior, you'll get aggressive in your story.
Yes.
Like you'll get martyr. Passive aggressiveness isn't just me being passive and then it coming out later. Passive aggressiveness can be the plot I build of what I'm a martyr.
Yeah.
Right? So we could stop right here and just say, put conflict and the ability to move through conflict on project status. Get yourself signed up for, online courses, read books, go out and Google how to get better at conflict. And then when you get these extreme approaches, which is one is like how to win everything, throw those out, really curate your material, form a curriculum for yourself, put this on project status. My first year, I'm going to learn to move through conflict. And part of learning isn't just the course you take, it's on the job, observing yourself as you go through this and noticing. See, most of us go through life observing how other people move through life. We rarely go through life observing how we move through life. And that's why we preach self-reflection, self-reflection, self-reflection. So you can't just read about it.
But we get that, Sai. What else? What is it besides that?
Yeah, besides that. Besides that. What else you got? If you're going to put something on project status, 90% of that project is knowing as you move through it, where you moved closer to an ideal and where you moved farther from an idea. But that gap, when you find it, you have to be compassionate towards it and not judge it. Otherwise, you're really teaching yourself that learning hurts.
Yeah, so true.
So you have to create safe space for yourself to do that learning. So that's what I would jump out first is your first year as a leader. You are doing a million things in here. I'm trying to improve the program and I'm trying to expand it and I'm trying to convince people I know something about patient care and I'm trying to do this and I'm kind of conflict-averse. Slow down.
Yeah.
It's your first year. It's your first management role. Work on the core things of a manager. Pick some of these. And the red thread that goes through all of these is that conflict aversion. That's what stuck out for me and you.
Yeah, that was the first thing I circled. And it got me thinking about, I just love this story from you, where you become a leader. And I just saw this, I'm going to be a leader, but I am going to be very conflict adverse. And it reminds me of what you said is,
story?
Yeah, your welding story. I think we got to give it to him one more time, but it's almost a thing that all of us as
Alex
new
dredges
leaders.
up my oldie but goodies. I see speakers on stage who've told the same stories for 30 years and I don't want to become one, but you asked.
But I think that this is good for this. Like, I'm going to be a leader or manager.
Yeah.
And just this conflict adverse thing's going to hang around.
Yeah.
Which I love the welder story for it.
So I was talking to a leader one day and he's like, I'm like, do you enjoy being a leader? He's like, I do. And I said, well, okay, if you really want to keep this job as being a leader, there's some basic things you need to do. You need to consistently give people feedback that is not insulting, that is just noticing. It's just inviting people to look at things and then assignments for self-reflection. He's like, I'm not really that good at feedback. And is there a training you could send me to for feedback? And it's something I absolutely have to learn. This went on forever. I'm like, you are not qualified for your job because your influence in giving feedback.
Like one of the top 5 things.
Yeah.
To be
Are you meeting
manager.
with your people one-on-one? He wouldn't do it. And I'm just like,
Can't find time for
that. And there was a lot of other things. And finally, I'm like, this is my negative thinking. I go, and leadership is actually the only job you can keep when you're absolutely unqualified for it and you refuse to do it. Like what other job? Yeah. You can do leadership for years without ever doing your job.
Yeah.
Giving feedback, coaching and developing people, mentoring people. So imagine if you were a welder and you come in, okay, and I go, I need you to weld. Gosh dang, I'm not really.
That type of metal.
Do you have like a class on welding? I'd be like, no, I hired you as a welder. Like, you need to weld. I'm kind of uncomfortable with this, like, I don't really like to do it, so I kind of skip that a lot. We would be like, "You're fired as a welder."
Yeah.
Like you,
Next
I hired
person
you as a
in.
welder, and you don't weld. You're fired.
You accepted the contract. You know what I mean? Like you signed on the dot that you will deliver the work.
But when it gets to leadership, we confuse continuing education with basic components of the job. Like you have to weld. Now, I may teach you, since we got a new metal in, how to do something a bit different. But leadership's the only job you can do without ever like doing your job
and keeping
which,
it.
Yeah, is interesting. And I'm not saying you're not doing your role, because I love the energy here. I love the positivity. I love all of that. You know what I picked up though as I went through this is it would be, there was a one sentence acknowledged as, I know I'm conflict-averse, and then a one sentence acknowledged of, I know there's ego at play. And I love that about whoever submitted this letter. You are getting it. You're waking up. What I would invite you to do is, in 2 different colors, take what you wrote down and highlight what you wrote as far as reflecting on yourself, what you know about yourself. And then highlight in a different color everything you either think you know about others or you say about others, which is basically you're disapproving of or you're disappointed in, or basically your judgment of others. And if I did this to I maybe would find 6 sentences, which is self-reflection, what I know about myself, what I hope, what I want to bring to the table. Yeah. Maybe more than that. I don't want to be over. You would have maybe some left white because it's kind of a background.
Yeah.
I lead a multi-disciplinary team, and you would have a whole lot too much on what other people are doing that, even though you're just reporting to me, as kind of a judgment of them. And I would go back to what you wrote or highlighted about what other people are doing. Visual things, guys, wake up the ego.
Visual.
That's why I want you to type it, print it, read it, color code it. When I go through, I'm not reading really for understanding. I'm reading for sorting.
Yeah.
Sorting what's good and true and neutral, sorting what's judgment, sorting what's your business and what's other people's business, sorting out where your expectations are.
Always, never. Yeah.
I'm just sorting that out. Someday I want to have a Grammarly program that when you type this stuff in, it plays me on your computer and it just comes up and says, here's the issue.
It's
right?
like 70% drama in this paragraph.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be funny? It would rate like your drama rating. And so as we go through this, you're clear that you're not the direct supervisor to anybody on the team, but your job is to, lead them in the context of this program that you were hired to run. Got it.
A clear one, like just background.
Yeah, background. Yeah. But when you say that, although I lead nurses, I'm not a nurse myself, and you identified it, you said, I feel as though they think I don't understand the roles or... That's where I see some insecurity coming up.
Yeah, I felt that too.
And I want to give you just some reality, okay? It's not that they think that you, it's not that, oh my gosh, they don't think I can do this. Here's your reality. You can't. What I mean by that is you can't fully understand their roles. You're not a nurse. You can't have the knowledge and experience necessary to take care of patients. They think that, and I think it's probably close to the truth.
Yeah.
I'm a nurse friend. I'm a nurse helper. I'm not a nurse, and I've led teams with nurses. But one of the first things I had to do is truly understand, in order to give enough respect to their profession, truly understand that I don't know a lot. And so I had to really get in the role and stay in the role of students. Now, I can contribute, I can lead, and you can contribute. You can, contribute from your nursing profession. But I have to get very clear and not be disgruntled about the fact that you don't think I know enough to do this. That's insecurity. I just want to assure you I don't know enough to do this.
Yeah.
That I need to do a crowdsource, a Google search, and you're my Google partners.
Yeah.
Because there's a lesson we would teach step parents. So back from my family counseling days.
Let's go back.
Step parents would come in and they would quickly say, this kid needs to learn. I'd be like, wait a minute, whose
Not a
kid?
good start.
Whose kid? Well, her kid or his kid. And I'm like, okay, already you're probably way out of your lane, right? Because it's so easy to protect our kids and judge somebody else's kids, right? And in fact, there's a whole group online called Nacho Children, right? It's like nachos that you eat.
Oh,
but
gotcha.
It's a whole step parenting group that reminds everybody that they aren't your kids. So anyway, there's a rule that someone taught me that I use a lot. And this is early too. I was in Houston. I can see her. I spoke about this recently. But she said, in their church program, they teach kids or parents rules. No, I'm sorry. They teach other people coming in to work with kids, like youth ministry, that rules without relationship equal rebellion. Now, what that means if you're working with an adolescent that you're not the parent with is like if you have no relationship with them,
and you're like,
the worst start you can have is here are the rules.
Bedtime,
Because without a relationship, it's going to just automatically equal rebellion. Now, in a step family, what that means is the first year or two, as a step parent, you need to work on forming a relationship before you can ever move into the position as like, a disciplinarian or a parent, right? So what this means here is I'm not saying you don't come in and you wait a year before you even try to manage this program. But what I want you to do is err on the side of not taking things personally. And if you can agree with what somebody just said, the best way out of emotional blackmail is to go, you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise,
and still here to help
they go, you don't know enough about patients to even run this program. And then your ego gets hooked. You go, oh, yes, I do. I don't need to be a nurse to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And you just grab the other end of the tug of war rope. And so when people would tell me that, I would go, you're probably right. I'm sure there's a lot you have to teach me. And what I would love is for you to teach me so that we can, and not try and teach me why we can't. And so if you would teach me what I need to know for us to move forward more quickly and more easily and more efficiently, I would welcome that information. So you keep the energy moving forward. So I picked up on that just a little bit of insecurity, but there's a lot of, I think there's underlying, you're diagnosing a lot of other people. They aren't willing, they aren't trusting.
In that, when you said that, I remember, I think it was the second year of me speaking on our stuff, and I was terrified. I was going to Minneapolis, and it was to teach reality-based leadership to a whole group of physicians. And one of your like secret weapons, if you guys don't know, is like coaching physicians. You guys just vibe. But I was terrified. And I felt this when I read this, which is my own story, but I was like, what are they going to listen to me for? And I actually had to tell you about this. I don't know if you remember it.
I do.
I was freaking out. I'm like, I think it was like 100 physicians. I'm like, what are they going to listen to me for? And I remember you said something that I will never forget for the rest of my life is, and I hope it adds something here for you, is they're not hiring you to teach them how to be a better physician or to do their clinical,
to do medical diagnosis.
Yeah, that's not what you're there for. You're going in there as, and this really helped me, the second best presenter in the world on reality-based leadership. Yeah. That's what they're there for. Yeah. And, I don't know where that came to you from, but I think what that does, not that you have to be the second best, whatever your exact role is, but know what's actually your value you're supposed to be adding and what their value is, and then find the big or even kind of with what Sai said, state that in some way with clarity that I'm here as an extra partner for you with this part of your day-to-day, whether it's, an operations piece or something like that.
And that's the invitation for collaboration. Instead of trying to manage over, especially in healthcare, where's the collaboration? It's like, I'm coming to you with information, and I have some newness in the management field, but I'm coming to you with a lot of data points on how we could grow programs and how we can manage work. And you're coming to me with some great expertise in nursing and these particular,
risks to think
the
about.
Chronic disease area. And so how do we collaborate by growing our shared pool of meaning? Crucial Conversations talks about that. But we got to go in inviting, not telling. We've got to go in when you're insecure, notice that you move away from curiosity and you start to close things down rather than open things up. And so just notice everyone today, I don't care if you've been a leader forever, notice how often you go in and quickly get into an I know mindset when you could just stay in that place of curiosity a bit.
One of the comments I had, I don't know why I wrote this now that I'm reading it, said closer to the mess. I wrote that right next to, I feel as if I don't know enough about what they're doing with patients. And I think about that a lot when I'm really uncomfortable with something.
Oh, I love this.
My mindset, I don't know where this came from, is I need to get closer to the mess with a more open mind. So you go in open and you go into what seems to be the mess for you, the fear of, I don't know what they're doing. And that is where I think you get closer to what you're saying, where you're open, you're actually learning, and then you can build on from there.
But if you think at what you're doing in this letter to create separateness or inclusiveness, separateness is I scheduled a meeting for us to come together. Like, it's like I scheduled this, they didn't come. I scheduled this and had an agenda and they didn't follow my agenda. It's tugging.
Yeah, you can
Instead
feel it.
of just saying, if it's so easy, I'll go first. If I want to increase understanding and working together, I'll go closer to the mess.
Yeah.
So, it sounds cliche. Covey talks about seek to understand before you seek to be understood. There's a lot of value you can add to this, Oklahoma City. There's a lot of value you can add. I think that while you have this hard charging value you want to add, you have an agenda. You need to soften that agenda to include, I can't ever know exactly what it's like, but help me understand the three biggest things I don't get.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to, if you think it's so easy, you want them to value you, go value them.
Yeah.
Give that, be the change you want to see in the world. Give that which you hope to receive in the world. And we did this in another letter, but if you go through here and every time you say, I feel like trust is an issue for them, put down, I feel like trust is an issue for me. And then just say, how's that true?
Around.
I don't trust myself as a leader. How is it true? I don't trust,
my
them.
current skill set in this environment yet.
And I might be the one not trusting, right? Because I found some things that you're doing that you're getting easily played in here too. So we'll get away from just basically you going out. I don't want you to go out without understanding one thing about yourself. Not only are you conflict-averse, but you gave me a lot of situations in which you're enabling. Somebody comes to you, it's when helping hurts. You want to help, so you go to their supervisor, right? It ends up, you're doing a lot of enabling. And so one of the things to get clear about, in fact, every leader, I think, is codependent. We, like Melody Beatty and a bunch of other super smart folks involved in the addictions field, maybe in the 70s and 80s, right? And we've progressed a lot in that field. We know so much more about addiction. And while I'm on that topic, one thing to change in our language is we talked about the addict instead of somebody who is currently working through an addiction, or somebody who has that maybe affliction, or people aren't people aren't diabetics. They're people living with a condition of diabetes.
Yes.
I think it's so important to separate those out. Anyway, off the soapbox, back to this side. Codependency was the knowledge that addicts can't be, people with addiction have a harder time staying involved with their chemical if they don't have some good enablers.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this bad behavior in the workplace, people are like, somebody should do something, right? That's us. And one of the things we can do, a lot of us want to make people do things or hold people accountable. And I don't think really that you can, but I do think you can do a lot of stop enabling people. So somebody came to me and they were complaining about another. I would really just want to say, can I hold up for just a minute? Something you need to know about me is I really don't get involved. Since I'm not your direct leader, I don't get involved in issues you have with others. But I'm really glad to support you as you have that conversation directly with them. If you're conflict adverse and codependent, not only will you avoid the conflict, you'll avoid action because you'll imagine it all could lead to conflict.
Oh,
and
yeah.
most early action doesn't lead to conflict. If you're conversational, you'll never really have to be confrontational.
Interesting.
So if I'm just conversing with you on a daily basis, hey, Alex, these 3 things you did seem to really have immediate impact. And one thing I hope that you can take a look at as you drive home tonight is your first reaction to this conversation, right? It's conversational.
Yeah.
That way I never have to sit Alex down after a year and a half and say, Alex.
And go from silence to violence.
Silence to violence. You are so overreactive. Because by then, instead of me just saying he had a reaction that could have been different, I've now attached it to him, the person. This does have to do with the addict versus the one who is currently using chemicals addictively, right? It's like if I'm conversational, I never have to be confrontational. But what happens with this stuff, especially when you're kind of a novice, is you haven't got some of this down pat. And so you have to do some role playing and some scripting and some thinking about how I'll handle this. Because there was about 3 situations where I was passive. I didn't act early enough. I'm conflict adverse. You ended up enabling people and then judging the situation as their issue.
Yeah.
They're not trusting, or I wish the situation would have been handled differently, and all of this messiness right here, because if you're a new leader and Cy Wakeman's like giving you feedback, you're going to forget all the things I said at the beginning of this podcast where I said you are a rock star and I love how open you are.
Absolutely.
I didn't say you're a rock star, but I said I love how open you are and I love that you're messing with
awareness.
This stuff. Yeah.
You've got some great examples to keep in mind, those themes.
I really think so. And so people are like, well, do I do this or that or this or that? It's just not that simple. Life is messy. You got to get in there and play with this thing. You can't think, what should I do? And then do it and then see how it works. It's not like that.
Yeah.
You have to go, how can I move more in this direction? And then you've got to ask people around you, like, what else would you like me to know? And what's one thing I could have done differently? Or right now, if I take a pause, what would be a healthier way for you to approach this? Like, instead of having the answers, instead of having all the plans, I just want you to find ways to get closer to the mess. I loved how you said that, to get in there and play and mess around with this stuff. And when people go, well, that was pushing it way too far, let go of your tug of war rope. Go, you could be right. Yeah. What would you advise me to do next? Now, don't allow yourself to get beat up and take over responsibility for these things. But I just get this sense in this letter, it went, I did, then they did, then I did, then they did.
And it wasn't the response, I thought, And another thing I would add is you have 2 great examples here that are, when I looked at them, are most common examples we hear across all industries, across every situation, which is someone came up to tattle on someone else or talk about someone else. Huge opportunity every single time that happens, regardless of your position, to hopefully get into stop judging, start helping.
Absolutely.
And then the next one was, how many of us have been in a meeting where we're here to talk about something and all the energy is going into, why we can't, or complaining about another group. These
are basics.
Those are 2 of, I would say, in my experience, the most common things that will happen, that each moment you can stay silent and avoid the conflict. You can be empowered if you're just a team member to step up and add a helpful data point. Or if you happen to be the facilitator of that meeting, you can notice that energy and back up and get us focused on how we could or what we're trying to create. So what I say that for is these 2. This can be your 3-month assignment to just reflect on, keep noticing, and eventually there's like this spark that happens where it just comes to you and you have practiced and rehearsed where you can take that courageous step to not like have this big moment, but to be able to finally take action on some of these ideas you're working on. So I see that in these 2. These will come up weekly.
They do come up weekly.
Like,
but I like where you're going with this because
doesn't have to be tomorrow.
I started to talk about, like, you're trying to do like so much in this. And what I like to do is have a focus area. And so I think one thing is to really plan a year for yourself where you have intense focus on not getting involved in drama triangles. That's just one thing. 3 months. Come up with your best techniques, your best kind of suitcase of ways to handle that situation. How I like to handle if somebody comes up to me and they're negative is I like to do what I call sort of micro boundary. I don't tell you I don't talk about people behind their backs, because unfortunately sometimes I do. Right? I don't want to make a statement.
Sai, can you believe what the receptionist did earlier? She totally was just being ridiculous.
Lydia, I've just started to get to know her. I've really enjoyed Lydia. I think she's, somebody, I see her just really doing the best she can with what she had. Is there something going on we should be helping with?
Oh, it's already awkward for me to get. But she keeps messing up and not filling out all the paperwork, and it's always a mess, and she's missing slots, and it's crazy. She should know this stuff.
I love that you really care about our patients, making sure that whole experience at the reception area is a great one. So I'm wondering, is there anything you could do when you're scheduling patients to make her job easier?
Well, I suppose I could write down or document the information a bit better, but I shouldn't really have to do that. That's kind of her job.
Here's how I like to think. I'm not your leader. I can't really tell you what to do. Here's what I like to think. When I see a situation, I want to help. I want to stay away from judging. So what I prefer, if we're going to work together, we can work on only the people present. So if there's something we could do to help, that'd be awesome. At times I see you tend to go back to what Lydia needs to do. And you may have some good points for her, but I think that's a conversation you should have with Lydia. So I've got about 5 more minutes. We can talk about some things you could do. Or if it comes down to being really about you and Lydia, then you probably have the wrong people in the room for that conversation.
Gotcha. Okay. I just wanted to play with that.
And you don't have to be as eloquent. And not that I was that eloquent, but I really think that you have to have some ways to do this. And if you screw this up, and you will, I screwed up daily, a mulligan is your friend.
Yeah.
And if you don't golf, a mulligan's an Irish term called a do-over. So let's say I do go, I know, Lydia drives me crazy. I don't feel good about that. I have to do it over. I call you the next day. I go, hey, do you have a minute? I was reflecting last night. And I didn't like how I responded to the conversation that you brought up about Lydia. And I would really like to do that differently. I was caught off guard. And so you be you, I'll be me, start again. And then I can respond differently. But the thing about this is you don't teach people by telling you. I don't know who said, maybe it was a Shakespeare, but if you have to tell people you're a lady, you probably aren't one, right? If you have to tell people you don't judge, you probably do. And that's ridiculous. We all do. Don't tell people what they should do or what you're about. Have them experience that from you time and time and time again. And so look at those micro boundaries on how you manage the energy of the conversation.
Because if you guys notice, I brought up the person you went with, Lydia. It was like your first thing was basically that you love her and she's a great colleague. Yeah.
And
it was
I did that
awkward for me to go any
intentionally.
further.
See, and that's what I stopped you in your tracks. It's the best technique I know. And unfortunately, I learned this technique in a horrible way. I knew it intellectually, but here's how I learned it experientially. Years and years and years ago, shocking news hit our neighborhood that the perfect couple, who seemed perfect from the outside, were choosing to divorce, which everybody gets the choice to do. It could be for the most positive reasons. We've decided that we've done what we need to do in each other's lives and we want to go do something different, right? So we're at kind of a cocktail party. And I go, oh my gosh, did you hear about I'll just say Johnsons. And the person I was talking to goes, you mean Karen? That's my sister. Why? And I went, oh my. I heard they're struggling. I really hope their marriage works out. I'm just cheering for them. I totally changed my tune. And it reminded me of micro boundaries. When somebody comes to be negative, especially about an individual, the first thing I do is say something, if I can't say something positive, at least neutral.
Yeah.
Gosh, I know that's got to be a challenging job. Why? if I can say something positive, gosh, I just am getting to know Lydia. And one of the things I really enjoy about her, did you know that she's an artist? And some of the things at her desk are her own artwork.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it just stops the ego's just rant going on. It slips in a little self-reflection. It's a good micro-boundary. And then the next technique is to say, oh my gosh, then what should we be doing to help? Is there anything I could do to help? Can I help you know how to handle that situation better? But do not collude together fixing Lydia. Lydia's not there.
And that help is like potential the organization or patient experience
or help you think of ways that you could
take action.
Yeah. And so I would put that on project status. I would put conflict on project status. I mean, it's those types of things that it's so easy to get into. I know this about myself, but let's skip that. I want to tell you about my situation. And trust me, you are co-creating that situation, and the universe will send you that situation over and over and over and over again until you heal that part of yourself.
Yeah.
And you'll never fully heal it, because once you get the 400 series done, the universe sends you the 500 series. And then there are some times where we fall back asleep. Like when I actively worked with clients, I was pretty good at boundaries. Recently in my life, I find that I have to take inventory. I get into trying to experience the world as neutral, so I'm not assigning whether that's good or bad or whether I like it or not like it. It's just all fine. But then I can get over to the side where even when I do have preferences, I don't exercise them.
Interesting.
And so I noticed that as I grew in the ability to not judge, I lost some of my skill set for expressing my preferences. And I attracted people to me who could behave poorly and not get that feedback, because I was just like, it's really their business. I'm not going to worry about it. But if you asked me about my general happiness in the world I could create, I would be like, I'm not really that satisfied. Why? Well, I'm not really putting some boundaries out there. Now, you only put a boundary out there not to change the other person, but let the other person know clearly what their choices are.
Yeah.
If you want to be with me in this moment, I have a non-negotiable, or I have a need. So don't use boundaries as weapons.
Yeah.
But I noticed when I went to do that, I was out of practice. I had to set some big boundaries, and I stank at it. And I was good at this. So I started to just notice the little things that happen that I could speak up gently, kindly, just to
start, get back into
saying,
it.
here's my preference. And so since I'm on airplanes a lot, I thought this is the perfect grounds, because people tend to try and maximize their own space in the airplane.
Stressful environment for people.
And people maximize their own space. And if you're over accommodating, pretty soon you ride like 4 hours, like with your laptop like this, right?
Yeah, seat back, armrests are taken. Yeah.
So I just started practicing little tiny things. Like if, in a restaurant outside of an airplane, if my steak wasn't done the way I wanted it to, Wakeman's usually like, I worked as a waitress. It's hard. I don't want to inconvenience them. I'll just eat the steak. I'm like, it could be my one good meal in 3 days, right? So I practice on how to appropriately send that back. So now I've been practicing, like one guy got up and instead of asking me to move, he probably was trying to be considerate. I can't know his motive. I'll give him benefit of the doubt. But he just kind of stepped in front of me and like straddled me and went over. And I was profoundly disturbed by this act of this guy I don't know, like straddling me. And he's like, nope, don't move. I'm good.
You weren't sleeping and woke up in the moment of it or anything. Yeah.
This guy.
It'd be horrible.
And so I was really miffed about it. And so while he was in the bathroom, I thought, instead of being miffed about it, I'm going to practice. So right as he came out, I practiced by not telling him my boundary, but taking action. Most boundaries should be action, not like thinking or telling. So I stood up to let him by, and then I set the boundary. It was a long flight. I said, it really is no bother for you to ask me to get up whenever you need to go to the bathroom. And in fact, it's my preference.
Interesting.
I would be more comfortable with that. And it was a practice on how to ask for what I need and be gentle. Now, the temptation in my mind, you'll notice you have to ignore like your first 4 reactions was like
sort through
fury.
Who raised this person?
Yeah. I judged his parents. I judged him. But if you give him benefit of the doubt, he probably was just trying to be least disruptive as possible, because who likes to make somebody get up, right?
Exactly.
So I'm just practicing setting these boundaries. And so for you, Miss Oklahoma, I want you to put on project status one of these things. There's you're enabling your codependency, your conflict aversion. You're tending to focus more on what their part was than your part. I really want you to get in there and just have a list of things you're going to work on for the year and really get into not working on them all at once, mastering.
Yeah.
And then if you have goals on how you want to move the program forward, you can't move them forward. You have to invite, work with the willing, have conversations, find out how you can be more inclusive, get curious about what you don't know. I want you to take your heart-charging goals and just for a moment, you can keep those goals, but back up and adapt your approach to this and get more inclusive. I feel you trying to change the world and the people in it, and it's not going to be sustainable unless at least some of the people in it are open to walking with you.
And it's interesting how the last transition to wrap this up here is what we often see just in the work we do is that those basics aren't being done. And then the way to try and fix it is to do one big staff development day where, one of us has to come in and we just talk. We try and drop the reality-based leadership bomb on someone in a group
Alex, will you
meeting.
come tell my people what they need to?
So then it's the triangle's happening, but in a big experiment, not 3 people now. It's your group, a speaker or something. And so that might be the natural tendency that you're going to is like, well, if I can't do it in individual interactions, which might take more time, more listening, a little bit different work, we're going to do a group session off-site to try and fix it all. And so
that's a great
not trying to take away that
insight.
idea. Those can be great. But
we like to get hired to come in.
Yeah, we're not trying to step out of opportunities here, but it is interesting then. That's where you almost go from silence to violence, where we come in and like deliver reality-based leadership, ditch the drama. And it's like, dang, that's, things we haven't.
And we see the difference. We see us being brought in to deliver the rules without relationship, and it does equal rebellion.
You can feel that on stage. I didn't realize that.
You can. You just stumbled on something that's really important, because if I were you, you might read through this again and just think about what's motive. What do I have motive in? What in this is control, where I want to change others, and what is growth, where I want to grow myself, and what is relationship and opportunity to connect better. Because you do see that where people bring us in with motive, and you see the opposite. And the places where reality-based leadership is profound is when the leaders love the philosophy and they put themselves in a position to learn right alongside of all of their folks, and they have a lot of humility about it. I just got the chance. Iowa is my home state. Love Iowa. Anytime I get back to Iowa, I'm like,
that's the rock star tour.
I love you, Omaha, Nebraska too. But when you get to go home to Iowa and people actually know what 6-girl basketball was, God. It's just my home state. So,
were you a first team all state and you never scored?
Yeah.
That was a question that always confused me. I'm like, how? All defense.
We had this great basketball team, and my kids, I played 6-girl basketball, and you only play half court and you're a guard the whole time, you never shoot. So my kids are like, how do you have all these letters in basketball? Because when they played pig with me, I never made a basket. They're like, Mom, I'm confused. I'm like, yeah, I was a guard. Anyway, I got to be in Iowa just yesterday. And I got to work with 3 companies. First of all, they're uber creative, and they found a way to bring me to town and then have 3 companies access my services. Talk about collaboration.
Yeah.
But what I loved about it, and I love shouting them out because they're all so cool. So Green State Credit Union and McGrath Auto, and Van Meter's worked with me for a long time.
That's awesome.
Green State, their CEO, has loved my stuff for a long time. These are avid fans where a few people said, I love her stuff, but they didn't shove it down the throats of others.
Interesting.
They introduced it, and they got really willing. And
vulnerable with it, saying, here's a piece I'm working on.
They were participants in book clubs instead of saying, read this book and come back to me. And what was great about that is the whole day, the energy, I hope they don't mind me calling them out because they're fantastic. The energy you could tell was their whole teams were just very open to the information. They asked me incredible questions. And it was really something. And it was from that piece of no one brought me in to fix their teams. They were involved with their teams in together trying to figure out how to grow their markets and together figuring out how to serve their customers. And they just brought me in to be another resource for their team to access.
Yeah.
And so together we were holding a conversation instead of me trying to change people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's the last piece I've seen, because I felt that energy as well in some of my sessions. So
yeah, I love that you brought that up. Folks, this is tricky to get at because the ego hides it. But here's your last assignment if you've been listening to we've been a bit all over the place. Get really honest with what your motive is. The same act could be an act of kindness or an act of control.
Interesting.
Even help can be the sunny side of control, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm just helping you. Well, help that isn't asked for isn't really
with
help.
Motive, yeah.
I'm writing about that in my new book, Life's Best You Live Happy. There's a new book coming. That's my soft announcement.
Yeah.
But I really want people to watch how you use the philosophy for evil and for good, and watch how you use it to show yourself superior and judge others, and how you use it to invite others into a conversation, right? How you're invoking my name to get what you want, or how you're invoking my name to invite your group to move into a different sort of conversation. Yeah. That's the subtle stuff of ego. That's when you get beyond the transactional. If I do X, I'll get Y, and you get into the transformational stuff. And you'll know you're really transformational, even though I love your loyalty, when you are saying to your team, let's listen to many voices on this topic. You know, Brene Brown takes it from one perspective. I take it from another. Simon Sinek takes it from another. You know, there's so many spiritual teachers and fantastic people out there taking it from yet other perspectives. So,
and then building from there.
Yeah, I think that's the assignment. Oklahoma City, I love first year in leadership, juicy role. That's how I developed. You're in the mess. Get close to the mess. Forgive yourself. You're going to screw this up, but only daily. I screwed up, but only daily. Juicy letter. Sort it out. Undo the ball of yarn. Figure out what are the big rocks that if you got more fluent in those areas, like collaborating, not enabling, you will be able to lead in any situation. But you can't fix the situation. You can't change the circumstances of the people until you grow yourself. When you're in higher consciousness, you're able to see the situation from a different perspective. And then, one, the situation looks differently. And two, you're more inviting, so you can see the helpers. As Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers.
Look for the helpers.
When you're toggled down and you're righteous and judgmental, even if it's sneaky,
they're the
you
villains.
Won't see the helpers.
Yeah.
You see them as villains.
Yeah.
These nurses, they may have some bad behaviors, just like you. We all have bad behaviors, but they're the helpers, and you're alienating the helpers.
And they're giving you the data points on where you can grow next. The
very ones you need to grow next. Now,
so true.
Yeah, I think it's good. Oh my gosh. Let us know. Give us about 6 months. Put some on project status.
Yeah.
And any of you that have answered our letters, we want the updates. So,
Ooh,
or sent us letters. If we've answered them, we want the updates. Like, you don't have to write, oh, sigh. You know, it was magical. It worked. I won't even believe that letter. Go, I did this, and I had to adjust here, and then we had a great conversation.
That'd
and
be
then
awesome.
This event.
This was helpful.
Yeah, we want to know some of the updates. So, okay, you guys, keep ditching the drama. It all starts with you.